Welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. This week, the Smooth Brain crew journeys through Middle-earth to try out some of the awesome new commanders from the new Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth set. First up is Chandler on Bilbo Baggins, Birthday Celebrant. Chandler built this as a creature-based life gain deck, and he hopes to use cards like Essence Warden and Soul Warden to gain enough life to activate Bilbo's ability and find every creature in his deck to put them on the battlefield. He keeps an opening hand with a Swamp, Bountiful Promenade, Many Partings, 3 Visits, Smuggler's Share, Prosperous Innkeeper, and Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit. Next up is me, Cameron, on Gollum, Scheming Guide. I decided to build this deck as a mono-black Voltron deck, prioritizing equipment with attack triggers in the likely event that Gollum gets removed from combat. I start the game with a Swamp, Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, Tyrite Sanctum, Black Market Connections, Arcane Signet, Swift Foot Boots, and a Worn Power Stone. Our third player today is Ethan, who brought Aragorn, the Uniter. Ethan hopes to land his commander early and then generate tons of value by casting charms and other multicolored spells. He keeps a hand of Arid Mesa, Windswept Heath, City of Brass, Exotic Orchard, Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, Skull Clamp, and Feyburrow Elder. Last up today is Matt on Sauron, the Dark Lord. Matt wants to land Sauron as early as possible to start amassing a massive orc army, suit up that army with equipment, and ride it to victory. He keeps a hand with Badlands, Xander's Lounge, City of Brass, Arcane Signet, Hegrim, Sword of Rohan, Cheska's Will, and Mahur, Uruk-hai Captain. We're about to hop right into the game, but before that, please go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our new content. We post new gameplay videos every week, so you won't want to miss it. Big shout out to our patrons, we really appreciate the support. Link to our Patreon is in the description, as well as links to the deck list, our social media, our podcast channel, and our public Discord server. Our channel is also partnered with Dragon Shield, so if you're looking to pick up any new sleeves or magic-related products, check out our affiliate link in the description below. We're also partnered with Inked Gaming, so if you're looking to make any custom playmats, use our affiliate link also in the description. And now, on to the gameplay.
The Dark Lord and Matt go first, and he'll play Xander's Lounge, and then he'll pass the turn to Chandler. Chandler shocks in an Overgrown Tomb, and he'll cast Many Partings. He'll make a food token, and then declare he's going to find a plains to his hand, and he'll pass to Cameron while he's searching. And Cameron says Swamp Go. Ethan plays Arid Mesa, and he'll fetch with it, and he says he's going to get a Rogrin Triumph, and he'll pass while searching. Matt plays Volcanic Island, and then he'll cast Arcane Signet, and then pass to Chandler. Chandler will play Bountiful Promenade, and then he'll cast Nature's Lore. He says he's going to get Indotha Triumph, and he'll pass to Cameron. Cameron plays another Swamp, and will cast Swiftfoot Boots, and then he'll pass to Ethan. Ethan has a similar turn to his last one. He'll play Windswept Heath, and then he'll fetch with it, this time finding Jetmir's Garden, and he'll pass while searching. Matt plays Luxury Suite, and Chandler and Cameron both consider scooping at instant speed so that it comes in tapped, but they don't. Matt will then cast, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right because I did do some research, Malhor? Anyways, it resolves, and then he'll pass the turn. Chandler plays a Plains, and then he'll cast 3 Visits. He finds an untapped forest to the battlefield, and then he'll cast Smuggler's Share, and then he'll pass the turn to Cameron, who will play Tyrite Sanctum, and then he'll tap for 2, and he'll cast Gollum. He'll then pay 1 and equip him with Swiftfoot Boots. He'll then move to combat and swing Gollum at the Dirty Bagginses. And now we start to resolve Gollum's attack trigger. Cameron looks at the top 2 cards of his library, and then puts them back in any order. He'll then choose land or non-land. Then an opponent guesses whether the top card of the library is the chosen type. If the opponent is correct, Gollum is removed from combat. If not, Gollum gains unblockable, and Cameron draws the card. So Cameron chooses non-land, and Chandler agrees. Top card is Call of the Ring, so Gollum is removed from combat. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and he'll play Command Tower into Feyburrow Elder, and then he'll pass the turn to Matt. Matt plays Badlands, and then he'll tap for 3 and cast Jeska's Will. Cameron has 6 in hand, so he'll target him and make 6 red mana. Then he'll tap for a blue and a black and cast Sauron, the Dark Lord. He'll then just pass the turn to Chandler, who will start off with a basic Swamp. Then he'll tap for 2 and cast Prosperous Innkeeper, which makes a treasure on ETB. Matt gets to amass, and it's 2 counters thanks to his other orc. Then he'll tap for Abzan and cast the Birthday Boy, Bilbo Baggins. Prosperous Innkeeper will trigger when he enters the battlefield, and Bilbo Baggins makes it 2 life. Matt will also amass again, and don't worry, he's just making a token. Then Chandler will cast Deathrite Shaman, amassing Matt again and gaining 2 more life. And listen, there are going to be a lot of amass triggers and a lot of life gain triggers this game. So to save a little bit of time, I'm not going to be announcing every single one. And so the turn is passed to Cameron, and he'll immediately move to combat and swing at Matt. Attack trigger, and Cameron says it's a land, and Matt agrees with him. And it's a Cathedral of War, so Gollum is removed from combat. Then post-combat, Cameron will cast Arcane Signet, then he'll cast Call of the Ring, then he'll play Bojuka Bog as land for turn, and it's Bojuka Bog, so it has to target Ethan. The turn is then passed, and Ethan plays an Exotic Orchard. Then he'll tap for 4 and cast Aragorn. Then he'll tap his Elder for 4 mana, and he casts Filani Wayfarer. It is all colors, so Aragorn will trigger 4 times. So he gets a 1/1 soldier, then he'll scry 2, 1 to the top and 1 to the bottom. He'll deal 3 damage to Matt, and with his +4/+4 trigger, he'll target Bilbo Baggins, turning him into Jimbro Baggins. And since Ethan had 1 mana left over from the Feyburrow Elder, he'll cast Skull Clamp and then pass the turn to Matt, who starts off with the City of Brass. Then he'll cast Sword of Hearthenholm, which he will immediately equip to his massive orc army. Matt will then move to combat, and he doesn't know who to hit, so he literally rolls a dice. And Chandler is the chosen player, so he takes 18 unblockable damage. And upon connecting, Hearthenholm will trigger. Matt declines blinking a creature, but will find a snow swamp to the battlefield, which will trigger Chandler's Smuggler Share on instep. Also upon connecting, Matt is tempted by the ring, and he makes his orc army his ring bearer. Post-combat, thanks to Sword of Hearthenholm, Matt now has enough mana to cast Dreadhorde Invasion, and just so you guys know, when he amasses on upkeep, the counter will be added to his orc army, and then the orc army will become a zombie orc army. And then the turn is passed to Chandler, and he'll play a Gonjo as land for turn. Then he'll tap for 2 and cast Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit. And when it resolves, he's partnered with Sam, Loyal Attendant, so Chandler gets to tutor Sam out of his deck to his hand. And then he'll tap for 3 and cast the Sam. After this, he'll move to combat, and Sam makes him a second food token. And then Chandler will pass the turn to Cameron. And on his upkeep, Call of the Ring tempts Cameron, and he'll make Gollum his ring bearer, and then he'll pay 2 life to Call of the Ring and draw a card. Then he'll move to combat, and he'll send Gollum at Ethan. Attack trigger, Cameron declares the top card of his library is non-land, and Ethan agrees. It's Blessing of Leeches, so Gollum is removed from combat. Post-combat though, Cameron will play Urborg. Then, terrified of Matt's board, he'll drop Damnation. Ethan will respond by convoking Izzet Charm, and this will trigger Aragorn twice. He'll scry 2 and deal 3 to Cameron. Both scries go to the bottom, and then Izzet Charm's mode was draw 2, discard 2, so he'll resolve that. And then after all that, Chandler will also respond to the Damnation by paying 2 mana to crack 2 foods and gain 8 life. He'll also pay another mana and activate Deathrite Shaman to exile Jessica's Will and make all of his opponents lose 2 life. And then finally, the Damnation resolves. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and Chandler gets 2 Smuggler Share triggers, and then Ethan will play Yavimaya into Hero of Precinct 1. Then he'll pass the turn to Matt, who amasses 1 on upkeep thanks to Dreadhorde Invasion. Then he'll play Ancient Tomb, and thanks to it, he's able to recast Sauron. Ethan will respond though by countering it with a Teamer Charm, and he does get to make a 1/1 from this. With nothing left to do, Matt will pass the turn to Chandler, who starts off with a High Market as land for turn. Then he'll cast Well of Lost Dreams. After this, he'll cast Avacyn's Pilgrim, and then Veto, and he's now hellbent, so he'll pass the turn to Cameron, who will get tempted on his upkeep, so it gains its second ability, but he doesn't have a creature, so he can't have a ring bearer. He'll then recast Gollum, and then re-equip the Swiftfoot Boots. He'll play the Cathedral of War, then move to combat, and swing at Chandler again. Cameron rearranges the top and says it's a land. Chandler disagrees, and it's a Felwar Stone. Gollum is removed from combat. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and he starts off by Skull Clamping his 1/1 to draw 2. He'll then play Spectator Seating his land for turn, and then he'll equip the Skull Clamp to his hero, and then pass the turn to Matt. And Chandler gets a Smuggler Share draw on instep. And Matt, with 9 mana, will play a Mountain as land for turn, then tap for 10, and recast Sauron. Matt will then move to combat, and he hits Cameron for 2 with his zombie army. Sauron will trigger, tempting him, and his ring gains the second ability, and the zombie army will be his ring bearer. Then, because he was tempted, Matt gets to discard his hand and draw 4 cards from Sauron. Then the turn is passed to Chandler, and he'll start off with Essence Warden. Then he'll tap for 5 and recast Bilbo. When he enters the battlefield, Chandler gains 2 off Essence Warden, then he'll drain 2 from Ethan with Veto, and then he'll pay 2 to his Well of Lost Dreams to draw 2. He'll also play Castle Locthwain as land for turn. The turn is then passed to Cameron. The ring tempts him up to its 3rd ability. Gollum is the ring bearer, and Cameron will pay 2 life to draw a card. He'll then move to combat and swing for 2, Exalted, 3 at Matt. Attack trigger, Cameron rearranges the top 2 and says it's non-land. Matt agrees, but it's a swamp, so Gollum gains unblockable, deals 3 commander to Matt, and Cameron draws that swamp. And then since Cameron attacked with his ring bearer, he draws and discards Worn Power Stone. Post-combat, he'll play a swamp as land for turn, and then he'll cast Read the Bones. He'll only scry 1 to the bottom, then he'll cast Soul Ring, Then he casts Strata Scythe. He'll search his library for a swamp and exile it. So whatever gets that equipment gets +1/+1 for each swamp on the battlefield. Chandler has 1 and Cameron has 3. And just in case you're wondering, no, Urborg does not change the name to swamp, just the type, so the equipped creature does not get it for every land. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and Chandler gets a smuggled card. Ethan starts off with Coiling Oracle, which triggers his hero, which will make him a 1/1. When the Oracle and the Soldier enter the battlefield, Chandler will gain 2 twice, and he'll drain Cameron and Matt for 2. He'll also pay 1 to his Well of Lost Dreams to draw a card. And Coiling Oracle reveals a Temple Garden, which Ethan will put to the battlefield. He'll then play Mana Confluence, and then he'll Skullclamp his 1/1 to draw 2 cards, meaning Chandler will get a treasure and a card on instead this turn. And not satisfied yet, Ethan will also Skullclamp his Oracle. Then he'll pass the turn to Matt. And Matt moves to equip his sword to his army, but Chandler will respond by attempting to Assassin's Trophy the army. Matt, however, has the actual factual counterspell. After all this debauchery, Matt will cast Swiftfoot Boots, then move to combat and swing for 12 at Cameron, who has no blockers.
In response, I cry.
Matt gets to draw and discard since he swung with his ring bearer, and Cameron takes the 12. Also, since this is a zombie orc army, and Dreadhorde Invasion is out, Matt gains 12. And since Matt connected with his army, he's tempted by the ring again, and since he's tempted by the ring again, he gets to discard his hand and draw 4 cards. He also forgets his Hearth and Home trigger, but after combat he will cast a Soul Ring, and then he'll pass the turn to Chandler, who starts off with Allhammerit's Archive. Then he'll play Undergrowth Stadium as land for turn, and then he drops Suture Priest. Ethan responds by casting Growth Spiral, which makes him a 1/1, which triggers Essence Warden, which gains Chandler 3 life. It could have been 4, but Chandler thinks magic is affected by PEMDAS. It isn't. Veto ability targets Ethan, then Chandler will pay 2 and a Well of Lost Dreams to draw 4 cards. Growth Spiral then resolves and Ethan puts in a basic forest. After this, he'll tap for 2 and cast Artifact Mutation on the Archive. Ethan will make another 1/1 off his hero, which will gain Chandler 3 and Ethan will drain 3. Then Artifact Mutation resolves. Allhammerit's is destroyed and Ethan makes 5 1/1s. Chandler will then gain 10 life, and then he'll drain Cameron and Matt for 2 and Ethan for 6. Then finally Suture Priest resolves, and Matt is drained for 2. Chandler will then pass the turn to Cameron, and on end step he'll flash in Blessing of Leeches onto Gollum. He'll then move to his turn, lose 1 on upkeep, and then the ring will also tempt him again on the upkeep. Then he plays Buried Ruin as lane for turn. He'll then cast Nightmare Lash. Then Ethan asks if Cameron lost 1 to his Blessing of Leeches, and Cameron can't remember, so he loses another 1. He'll then move to equip his Nightmare Lash to Gollum by paying 3 life. Cameron will then move to combat and turn Gollum sideways at Chandler. Thanks to the Nightmare Lash and Exalted trigger, Gollum has 15 power. There's 2 attack triggers, Gollum's and the Ring Bearer, so Cameron will draw, discard, and then he'll rearrange the top 2 of his library and say it's a land. Chandler agrees, and it's a Doomblade, so Cameron draws that, and Gollum gets in for 15 commander. And since Cameron has a max level ring, whenever the Ring Bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and Chandler gets a Smuggler's card on instep. Then Ethan will start off by Skullclamping a 1/1. He'll then do it again, and then he'll play Bountiful Promenade as land for turn. He'll then cast Chromatic Lantern, and then Aragorn. Cast Trigger makes a 1/1, which triggers Essence Warden and Suture Priest, which also triggers Veto, targeting Matt. Then Aragorn resolves, and we get all the triggers again, this time Veto targeting Ethan. Ethan will then pass the turn, but Matt stops on instep to channel Otawara, targeting Veto. Chandler will respond by tapping for 3 and casting Cosmic Rebirth, targeting Sam the Loyal Attendant. So Sam comes back to the battlefield and Chandler will gain 4, Veto causes Matt to lose 4, and then Sam is a creature entering the battlefield, so Chandler will gain 2 twice, and he'll drain Matt for 2 and Ethan for 2. So Otawara will then resolve, and then Chandler remembers its end step, so he draws a card off Smuggler's Share. Now on Matt's turn, he'll play a mountain, then he'll drop Sword of Feast and Famine, and it's immediately equipped to his Orc army. Then Matt moves to combat and hits Chandler for 21. He'll draw and discard from attacking, and then Chandler takes all 21, and Matt gains that much. Matt will also be tempted by the ring, which allows him to discard his hand and draw 4 cards, and then Sword of Feast and Famine will trigger. Matt untaps, and Chandler discards a land. Matt will then cast Frantic Search to draw 2, discard 2, and then untap the lands he used. Then he'll pass the turn to Chandler, who plays Minas Tirith as land for turn. Then he'll move to combat, but Cameron decides he wants to stay on his first main phase, and he'll cast Doomblade on Sam.
Fuck you, Sam!
It resolves, and since Cameron didn't let Chandler go to combat, they're still in first main, so Chandler decides to start casting stuff. And he starts off with Chembal, Council of Allocation. He'll then cast Veto again, and when Veto enters, Chandler gains 4, and Matt is drained for 4. He'll then move to combat, and he'll swing for 4 at Cameron, putting him down to 2. And after combat, Chandler taps for 6 and casts Asterion the Decadent. When Asterion enters, he'll gain 2 twice, and he'll drain Cameron for 2 and Matt for 2. This will unfortunately kill Cameron, so Gollum is out of the game. Chandler will then move to his end step, and Astarion triggers and he chooses friends, so he'll gain 12 plus 1 life. And then Matt is drained for 13 life. The turn is then passed to Ethan, and he'll start off with a Snow Forest as land for turn. He'll then cast Expressive Iteration, and this puts an incredible amount of triggers on the stack. First off, Matt amasses, then Camball will drain Ethan for 2 and gain Chandler 3, and then Vito will drain Matt for that 3. Ethan will then make another 1/1, Suture Priest drains him for 1, and then Chandler will gain 2 life, and Vito will drain Matt for 2. Then Ethan will deal 3 to Chandler's face and scry 2, and then the Expressive Iteration will resolve. And Simic Charm is the exiled card. Ethan will then Skull Clamp his fresh human token to draw 2, and Chandler will also draw on his end step. Then after a little bit of thinking, Ethan will just pass the turn. He's in a pretty tight spot, but Matt will stop on end step and flash in Embercleave. Camball will trigger, gaining Chandler 3, losing Matt 2, and then Vito loses Matt an additional 3. Ethan then moves to clean up, discards a land, and the turn is Matt's. After his upkeep amass, Matt will immediately move to combat and swing at Chandler for 28 double strike. Ring trigger, he'll draw and discard. Because of the swords, Chandler can't block it, so he takes 56 damage. Matt has a lot of sword triggers, so he'll untap twice, Chandler will discard 2 cards, and with Sword of Hearth and Home, he goes and finds his last basic. The ring's last ability also triggers, so all of Matt's opponents lose 3 life. And while Matt's ring is at max level, he is still tempted, so he'll discard his hand and draw 4. Post-combat, Matt will tap for 8 mana to cast Shatter Skull Smashing, X is equal to 6, to kill Astarion and Vito. Camball trigger, Chandler will gain 3, and Matt will drain 5. That resolves, and then the turn is passed to Chandler, and he has Smuggler Share trigger on the end step. He'll start his turn with Path to Exile, targeting Sauron. Board trigger, and he sacrifices Bilbo. After this, he'll cast Welcoming Vampire, then a Soul Ring, then he'll recast Bilbo, and he'll draw a card when he enters the battlefield. And after Bilbo comes Authority of the Consuls, then Delighted Halfling, then Birds of Paradise. Chandler will then pass the turn, but Ethan stops on end step to cast Bant Charms. A whole buttload of triggers go on the stack. Camball trigger drains Ethan, then Ethan will make 2 1/1s, which will drain him for 2 off Suture Priest, and Chandler will gain off both Essence Warden and Authority of the Consuls. Ethan will then scry 2, 1 to the top, and give Aragorn +4/+4, and then the Bant Charm will finally resolve, and its mode was put Camball to the bottom of Chandler's library. Then Ethan will move to his turn, where he will tap for 7 and cast Titanic Ultimatum. There's a bunch of triggers that go on the stack. 2 of them make 1/1s. One of them will target Aragorn, and he'll get +4/+4 till end of turn. Another one deals 3 damage, and it targets Matt's face. With all those triggers still on the stack, Matt realizes Ethan's going to be putting himself to 1 off of this because of Chandler's Suture Priest, so he decides to respond, and he'll Pongify Aragorn, meaning Aragorn is destroyed and a monkey is created. So Ethan loses 1 and Chandler will gain 4. Then we travel down the stack. Matt takes 3, Aragorn's gone so he doesn't get +4/+4, then Ethan creates 2 1/1s. And this will put 2 Suture Priest triggers on the stack, killing Ethan and gaining Chandler 8. And so now the turn is Matt's, and all he has to do is untap and turn his massive army sideways at Chandler. And that's exactly what happens. Chandler does show that he had an Aetherflux he was looking forward to casting next turn, but he never got there. So today's winner is Matt. Congratulations to the Dark Lord. Well everyone, there you have it. Looks like in our timeline, even Aragorn couldn't overcome the Dark Lord's army. Bilbo couldn't have his cake and eat it too, and Gollum, well, Gollum got what he deserved. But hey, that was a really fun game if you asked me. But now I'm asking you, what did you think? Did you enjoy it? Let us know down in the comments below if you did. Also, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And while you're down there, check out all of our awesome links. And if you're really into this new Middle-earth set, tune in next week where we play 4 completely different commanders. But that's all for today, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed. Have a smooth day.